Can you do the pledge of allegiance to the flag?
Where's
Behind me, it's behind you. Steve Weiss, can you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, roll call, please.
Chair Maggie Bird.
Here,
Adriana Vondergraaf has been excused. Matthew Johnston has been excused. Shane Warburton,
Here.
James Flickinger will be noted as absent. Gerald Abramson,
Here.
Steve Weiss,
Here.
Steve Townhill.
Here.
You do have a quorum.
thank you. Okay, let me review. We need the approval of the January 9th minutes. Or does anybody have any questions? Or does somebody want to submit a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the January 9th meeting. I second the motion.
I think we should still remember to say our names so that it can be caught. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so the January minutes.
Chair, we're gonna provide you a microphone real quick.
Sorry. I didn't think my voice was that soft. Is this on?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay. Public comment period, airport related comments.
Don't we need to vote on the motion to approve the minutes? Those two. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, thank you, okay. Do I hear a motion to approve minutes as read?
No, we have a motion and a
We
second,
do?
but I think we need to vote on it.
I didn't hear that. I'm
That's what I'm
sorry.
saying.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now we can go on.
Thanks.
Okay. Airport related comments will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes per item. The public comment period is reserved for issues not on the agenda. And the in-person public comments, speakers must fill out a speaker card and submit it to the secretary before the end of the public comment period. Speaker cards for issues listed on the agenda must be presented before the item is up for consideration. Speakers will be called when the item is presented. And for Zoom participants, public comment, speakers should press the raise hand button. Or if joining by telephone, press the star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue when the chair of the commission calls for public comment. Okay, so do we have any public comments? I don't see any cards. Okay. All right. New business. Chair. What was that?
Chair, there is one person online who wishes to speak, Ms. Weingarten. And one of her panelists now.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Great. Good afternoon. My name is Rita Weingarten and I live in Oxnard Shores. The efforts of Jeanette and Keith are being undermined by the flight schools and pilots. Many flight schools have resolved to hiding their tail numbers. This dishonest practice is increasing daily. The residents can hear and see these low and loud flying planes overhead, but cannot see them on FlightAware or VNOM. It skews the numbers and appears that we have a program that is getting better, which in all actuality, we have a program with data that is not displaying the facts. Why would the residents ever believe or trust flight schools and pilots to be a good neighbor that hide their tail number. It's deceitful and simply wrong. This is a prime example of why the program is not working. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
Chair, there are no other public comments.
All right, thank you. And no speaker cards that I've seen. Okay, new business. Renew and approve the January through August 2023 Aviation Advisory Commission meetings calendar. Can we?
Madam Chair, I can give a bit of a background. The commission in the during the January meeting decided to do a 6-month test of the either morning or lunchtime. This meeting only ACA for the next 6 months. So what we've prepared in the packet is basically 3 options. Either you continue with all straight lunchtime meetings at 12 noon. We did an alternate where the next meeting would be a breakfast meeting, moving to lunch and alternating that way, and then all straight breakfast meetings at 9 a.m. So we prepared 3 options for the consideration of the commission, and it's kind of really to decide and let us know which you believe is the best.
So I suppose we might mean that we should try all 3 before we vote on it.
Really 2 options, breakfast or a lunchtime meeting.
Okay, without the alternating.
But however you wish to set the schedule, it's usually best to set the schedule so the community members know when to plan around and they can attend. So
Well, certainly, yeah.
it's yours for discussion.
Okay, is there any questions or
Why
discussion?
don't we call for a motion first and then
Okay.
go to discussion?
Okay, go ahead, somebody move. Nobody's
Well,
going.
I would like to say that I live further away, and 9 o'clock in the morning, there's a lot of traffic. I live at least 35 minutes away if there's no traffic. So I would not like really appreciate coming and trying to get down here at 9 o'clock through all the rush morning, rush traffic in the morning.
Well, it was my understanding that this was a done deal. This was a trial thing to do
Oh, it is, but I would say
at noontime,
at noontime, right, exactly.
right? So
That I can make,
I don't know where this other proposal, is it the
Yeah.
new proposal that came forward as far as?
Yeah, I don't know where the 9 o'clock in the morning came from.
It was really just through the discussion of committee members, commission members. Again, it's yours to set. That wasn't decided in the January meeting. What time specifically. So
I would like to make a motion that we just meet at 12 noon all the time. Go
Well,
with that, you know?
I'll second the motion.
okay, if everybody's had a chance to review the options and we have a forum, I guess we can vote right now then. Any other discussions or questions? No?
Well, another point, is it on the table to alternate the site of the meeting between here and Oxnard Airport, where at one time that was on the table to have our meetings at Oxnard Airport?
Location would be an alternate option, although at this point, because as I reported, I think, last meeting, we had a small fire at the terminal building. It doesn't look like that the repairs will be done
Oh,
until August
Okay.
at this point, but
Okay, so it's a moot point.
that is open in the future.
thank you. Okay, we have a motion on the floor for the night, or for the noon meeting, excuse me. And I hope by lunch and breakfast, you meant you're going to serve food here, right?
That's the least thing.
Okay, we're talking about this time, the 12 o'clock. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay. One abstention.
Thank you. That motion passes 4-0 with 1 abstention by Mr. Steve Tannehill.
Thank you. Okay. Recommendation. Staff requested that we review and approve the January through August. The calendar, I'm so sorry. Okay. Staff requested your commission authority receive and file a presentation of the relocation and replacement of the rotating beacon at Camarillo Airport. And Keith, you want to address that for us? Oh, good.
Good afternoon, Erin Powers, Projects Administrator, some new faces or faces who I haven't seen in person, so very good to see you all. This item before you is a receive and file presentation. Where we have hired Mead and Hunt to assist us with the replacement and relocation of our existing rotating beacon at Henry Airport. And they have a short presentation to share with you information about that project. And I should have said also that Rafael Gonzalez with Mead and Hunt will be sharing that presentation.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Can everybody hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. So I'm not sure if the PowerPoint presentation is going to be shared. There we go. So thank you, everybody. So this presentation is just a brief explanation of what the replacement project for the rotating beacon at Camarillo Airport consists of. So we can go to the next slide. So basically the existing rotating beacon, as some of you might know, it's actually located on top of the water tower at the main entrance of the Camarillo Airport. And it has surpassed its useful life. So, and this current location is actually really hard to access and maintain. Also, the water tower and the property where the water tower is located is not owned by the airport or the county. So with those reasons, we, Mead and Hunt, made a study to assess what are the best new locations for the new beacon at the airport. We can go to the next slide. So these are the 4 sites that were considered for this study. The first one was to be on top of the tower. Site number 2 is to locate it right next to the existing electrical vault. Site number 3, it was to put it on top of the sheriff's hangar. And then the last site was to put it in the county maintenance yard. So we basically assess each of these sites based on these criteria that you see on the screen. Like the first criteria is that it was going to be a county-owned facility for obvious reasons. Also, we consider impacts to the tower as well. Impacts to the residents around the airport was another consideration. Availability of power sources. Availability of beacon height, depending on each of the sites. Also, the need for a remote transmitter. And then we consider also other requirements such as accessibility, ease of maintenance, and things of that nature. After all the evaluation, we determined that probably the best site to locate the new beacon is right next to the electrical vault. As you can see in the image on the upper right, there is no anticipated impacts to the tower at the airport. The beacon is supposed to be a 75-foot high beacon, and the angle of the light is going to be at least 5 to 10 degrees. So that was going to clear the tower. And also, we did a quick study for impacts to the residents across on the north side of the airport. And that's the image in the bottom where you can see that the new beacon is going to be way overhead of those residences. The proposed height, like I mentioned, is a 70-foot high tip down pole. And also the power source is right there at the electrical vault. And since it's right there next to the vault, a transmitter is not required. So some of the advantages of the tip down pole that we're proposing is that it meets all the FAA requirements. As you can see in the image, this pole can be lowered by a single person using a cranking mechanism that you can see there in the photo in the middle. And this is going to allow ease of maintenance, and you don't have the risk of somebody climbing a tower and the special certifications for somebody to be in high altitudes and things of that nature. And you don't need additional equipment to maintain this beacon. And like I said, this pole can be lowered by a single person, and it has a counterweight that makes it pretty easy to do so. So with that, that's pretty much what the project is about. I will take any questions from anybody.
Yes, I just want to add, we wanted to share this information, relocating a rotating beacon, we have the need, but we didn't want this to be a surprise. So we did want to just share this information and let everyone know the considerations that went into place in finding a new location. So we're ready to answer any questions should.
Yeah, what is the time frame on this?
We are planning to complete this project before the end of the year, so by December 2023.
So I assume the current rotating beacon will continue to operate until the new one is.
Correct. We will construct, we're working with the FAA to finalize locations, so there may be some adjustments possible, but we do think that we found the best location, and we're just working with the FAA on that. And then from there, we will construct it and have it ready to go and test it, but before we decommission the existing rotating beacon.
Great, thank you. Any questions?
A question, Erin, in assessing the impact on the tower and on the community, how was that done? Was it just something we did, looked at it and said, okay, we're good to go? Did we have the tower give us feedback? Did we have the community give us feedback?
Sure. So first of all, the project went through a 7460 determination. So it has been evaluated by the FAA. We're still working to finalize things, but as you can see, the beam modeling shows the clearance. Additionally, we have built into the project the ability to make it, not only do we have the ability to adjust the beam within, higher based on feedback we receive either from the tower or the community, but the modeling itself shows that it does miss both the towers, so there should be no impacts and on the residences. But we also have the ability to add shields to make additional adjustments if needed.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay,
Receive and file.
thank you. Yep. And thank you for the presentation. Okay. Next, staff requests that your commission authority receive and file a presentation on the. I did that.
Yeah.
I did. Now,
Steve,
okay, C, approval and award of a consultant services contract to Aviation, a Woolpart company in the amount of $355,900 for the repackaged design of select elements for the reconstruction of taxiway Foxtrot at Oxnard Airport. Authorization for the director of airports or his designee to execute subject contract, and authorization for the auditor controller to process the necessary budgetary transactions. Everybody understand that?
Thank you. This is my item. Pleased to be before you. We are seeking your recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to make to pass these recommendations, and the item before you really is for a design services contract with Aviation, as you described. As you may recall, the original taxiway Foxtrot reconstruction project was designed with runway a couple of years ago. It was bid as one project as an alternate and we contemplated that the work would be completed during that full airport closure. The FAA did not have enough grant funding available to fund that alternate. And just like the taxiway connector project, we have had to seek that funding separately. So now the FAA has indicated that they are supportive of funding this project in this 2023 grant cycle. And we are looking to repackage the project as an individual project with some phasing to reduce impacts to users. And so that work would take place at night, as most of our construction does, to assist us with FAA construction phasing requirements. And the anticipated, and so it will still be a several month project, but it will take place at night reopening the runway each day for operations. The taxway Foxtrot reconstruction, I did want to call out a couple interesting points that will, it does include the full length reconstruction of taxway Foxtrot. It also includes shifting the taxiway itself 40 feet south. And that's so that we meet our ultimate FAA design requirements for separation between runway and taxiway centerline. And then we also need to meet FAA design standards, we will be renaming all of our taxiway connectors. Instead of Alpha through Echo, we are required to rename them Alpha 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that is contemplated as part of this project. With that, staff is requesting your commission recommend the board move these additional items. I should have mentioned also that this project is anticipated to receive 90% funding from the FAA. And we, as part of our recommended actions, we are requesting that we have a budgetary adjustment in order to move forward with this project, because we had scheduled it for the next fiscal year, but this redesign needs to take place now, and that is not currently in our budget.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes.
on that?
Is the renaming on the FAA's direction?
Yes, so because they have, it could have been because of the reconstruction, and with the taxiway connectors contemplated being done, they are requiring us to meet current design standards.
Thank you.
I know you didn't think of it. Thank you.
I personally like Alpha through Echo. I think it's a bit more distinguishable than all, but I'm also not.
It doesn't matter what we like,
And there are no problem moving the runway, I'm sorry, the taxiway 40 feet south. We could do that without disrupting any hangars or anything else.
That's correct. So it won't impact any hangars. It will have an impact to the drive lane, because the drive lane will not, the driveway will go away as part of this project, because we cannot meet drive lane standards to have it. So we will be including some additional signage on the west end of the airport, because there will be tower communications required to cross the Marinus.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We want to receive and file that. Steve?
So this is the required vote.
It does?
Mhm.
I'm sorry, okay.
I move to approve and award the consultant services pursuant to exhibit 1, authorize the director of airports or designate to execute the selected contract, and authorize the audit control and process the necessary budgetary transactions.
And I will second that motion.
Okay, thank you. And again, please say your name before you start speaking so that the people at home and anybody who's taking notes here will know who you are. Okay, so there's a motion on the floor and seconded. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, passes unanimously. Next one, subject. Appointment of one member of the Aviation Advisory Commission to the Planning Advisory Commission for the Camarillo Airport Part 150 study, and one member of the Planning Advisory Commission for the Oxnard Airport Part 150 study. Take recommendations? Or do
So I'll
you-
give a little background,
Yeah, please.
continuing with that is, as we've discussed, the airports department is undertaking 2 Part 150 noise studies, one for Oxnard, one for Camarillo Airport. So we are asking the Aviation Advisory Commission to appoint one person to each or the same person to both. That would be your discretion. But so that they could represent this organization on our fairly large stakeholder group with the PAC group. So that's what we're looking for. Anything I can answer, that'd be great.
Do you have any recommendations as to the qualifications of the people that we select?
No, I would leave that to the AAC. Again, we have a very diverse stakeholder representation at this point. So it's really up to this group who they believe would fit best with Oxnard and Camarillo representing this organization on that group.
So I guess I need to entertain nominations.
Discussion, nominations, yes.
Anybody want to speak?
Let's see if anyone wants to do it.
Well,
Volunteers.
I certainly would. Yeah.
Okay. I would suggest that somebody from the supervisor district that includes Camarillo would be a good person to be on the Camarillo Part 150 study. And I think somebody from the supervisor district that Oxnard Airport is in would be a good candidate for the Oxnard 150 study. That's my opinion. And I will also offer to the group that I did apply when the open applications were out there through the PAC, and I was selected. So right now I am on the PAC for Oxnard, and I'm happy to represent the commission. Or if you'd like to add somebody else to it, obviously that's the commission's decision.
Well, I understand your thought process on that, which seems to make sense. However, it kind of leaves out everybody from Thousand Oaks and Simi Valley and everything else. I believe that we also have kind of an equal share since we fly out of both airports. Go ahead.
Well, my thought simply is that you're gonna put one person on the Camarillo. So who for Camarillo, or Oxnard, and one for Oxnard. So I just think, again, my thought was, you're gonna leave somebody out by definition, because there's 5 supervisorial districts. So this way you'll at least get 2 of the districts represented. And it does seem to me to make sense that somebody who lives in the Camarillo Airport area would be best equipped to be part of the planning advisory group.
I'd like to address that.
Okay, good.
If things were that simple, Steve, I believe then we would only need 2 supervisors to be voting on any airport related activities, which isn't the way it goes down with the Board of Supervisors. So I think anyone on this body and that's been appointed and served is qualified to act on that committee. That's just my personal thought.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Keith, you have something to say?
Well, I was just gonna go along the lines of Commissioner Weiss, is that, the representation is for this group is for the AAC, so it could be anybody. And that's kind of what we've done with the stakeholder group, is we're not necessarily looking for the same community, 10 community members from one location. It's, distribution across the board. So I would agree with Commissioner Weiss.
Okay, and this says appoint 1 member, is that correct? Is that the way you want to do it? Okay,
Could be the same person or one person for
one
each.
for each, that's what I understand.
Correct.
Right.
Okay,
So why don't we decide on if we want to appoint one person for both or one person for each, and then move forward.
okay. We want to, are you proposing that to take a vote?
Well, it actually says 1 member for each place
No, it says,
and study and 1 member. So it states 2 different people.
I would favor 2 different people. It allows more people to be involved, which I think is a good thing.
Okay, well,
One member advisory commission to the planning
Yeah.
advisory committee for Camarillo. One for the study and one member, that means two people.
okay,
Well, we won't debate that, but I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that's good.
okay, do I hear any nominations?
Well, I'll nominate, Mr. Tannenhill for Oxnard and Miss Bird for Camarillo.
Thank you. Any problems with that, anybody?
Are you okay with that?
Sure, thank you.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
I don't think it's a motion to nomination, right? Yeah. It just as a point, so I think we're clean with that now. Okay, next subject. Receive and file a staff presentation regarding fly-friendly VC progress report.
Wait, so don't we need to, vote on this?
No, it just says a point, it didn't say it had to be voted on, right?
It's. You probably vote. No, it says staff requests that your commission appoint,
Mm-hmm,
so
if we just
if
appointed,
that's suffices as appointing, but we have a motion in a second, so why don't we vote on Steve Tannenhill for the Oxnard Airport representation and Maggie Bird for the Camarillo Airport.
fine, okay. Oh, no, that was a motion then, all right. Is there a second?
I seconded it.
Okay. All in favor?
All right,
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes, thank you.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Jeanette Harigi. Most of you I haven't met in person, since I started in September, and we were still virtual, so it's a pleasure to see you all in person and put a physical face to the name, and thank you to the community members and everyone else who's here who, I get to meet in person. Would it be, Dave, if I come over here and speak up or bring the microphone, is it not beneficial for the folks on Zoom? It's fine.
You're objecting, but
Somebody told me today on the phone that I'm a good talker. We'll see. All right, so again, my name is Jeanette Harigi. I'm the Communications and Engagement Manager for the Department of Airports, and I'm here to give a progress report on Fly Friendly DC. Okay. There we go. So for those, I'm gonna give a little background on Fly Friendly DC for those who might not be familiar with it. Fly Friendly DC is a national program implemented locally, launched here September 13th of 2022 by the Ventura County Department of Airports. Next slide. The program focuses on 3 key goals. We want to address noise-related concerns from the community. Oxnard and Camarillo, that's touch and go activity in particular, and the Camarillo has a heavier focus on jet arrivals. We want to connect with and nurture our relationships with the community with improved communication efforts on all aspects of the airport, but in particular for this situation related to noise. And then we want to establish and continue relationship with base pilots, regional flight schools, and tower staff. Improve our communication with them and ensure that they're armed with the tools that they need to make Fly Friendly DC a success. So the primary components of Fly Friendly DC are education and pilot guides developed for both Camarillo and Oxnard airports that provide alternative flight patterns and are tailored for pilots in particular to help avoid residential overflights, and also enhanced flight activity and noise comment tracking using Vector Noise and Operations Management System, or VNOMS, as we call it. Next slide, please. Yeah, next slide, please. Oh, there we go. Okay, so where we were, we're about 6 months into this program, and I wanted to share some comparisons of where we were prior to September 13th launch and where we are now and where we're headed. So, prior to my start with the airport in the beginning of September, we had minimized communication with the public and flight schools and base pilots, so huge gaps in communication. We did have a dedicated phone line for noise comments, guidance on bcairports.org. We had some airfield signage, but we didn't have staff dedicated to address noise in particular. And so, again, the main issues were minimized communication and minimized resources. I'm going to show some images of some flight tracks. This is the week of September 4th. So there's going to be several images. I'll show you daily activity. This was a holiday week, coming off of Labor Day. Ideal weather conditions. Oops. Oh, there we go. Okay. Ideal weather conditions. So this is the week prior to the launch of Flight Friendly DC. So this is over Oxnard in particular. So we see some right turn traffic, which is good, but a lot of turns over the coastal communities in particular, and some some traffic south of Woolley. Oops. So that was Sunday, September 4th. What is it? Oh, there we go. Switching up.
Not sure why it's switching, it's, good. No, it's, good.
Okay.
I'll switch you.
Okay, so Dave will switch. Sorry, everyone. All right, so that's Sunday, September 4th. Again, a holiday week, ideal weather conditions. You can switch slides. And then we have Monday, September 5th. A decent amount of balance, and we can see areas in Oxnard Shores that are visible, but still a decent amount of traffic south of Woolley. Next slide. Tuesday, September 6th. Heavy, busy day, a lot of traffic over Oxnard Shores, a lot of traffic south of Woolley. Some right turn traffic, but not a great balance that day. And again, a lot of turns over the community. Next slide, please. We have September 7th. Again, heavier traffic to the left. We have traffic south of Woolley. Decent amount of turns over the community. Next slide. September 8th, ton of traffic turns over the community, traffic south of Woolley again. We're seeing right turn traffic. So right turn traffic did exist before, but there was, heavier amounts of left turn traffic. Next slide, please. September 9th, pretty decent balance. We're seeing traffic south of Woolley. Turns over the residential areas again. So we'd like to see some improved turns. That part of the goal of Flight Friendly DC is to have those turns before the canal, or at least 1 mile past the shoreline. Next slide, please. Then we get into a doozy. So September 10th, that was a rough day. And I think we can all agree on that. And so zero visual of the Oxnard Shores and Channel Islands communities, lots of traffic south of Woolley. So this is September 10th. This was a Saturday. The launch of Flight Friendly DC was just a few days after that. So next slide, please. So kind of a recap of that week, the week of September 4th, ideal weather conditions. It was the week prior to Flight Friendly DC. It was a holiday week. 5 bad days, 1 really bad day on the 10th, and then 1 better day where, a good balance, but we would have liked to have seen some better turns over the community. Next slide, please. So let's talk about where we are right now. I was hired in September to help focus on noise and also bridge that gap in communication. We've been working on establishing relationships with the flight schools, base pilots, and the community, and keeping those lines of communication open, bridging that gap. We've improved our relationship and communication with the tower team. We have regular communication with them. We've communicated fly friendly BC information to all flight schools. And we're working on getting it out to all base pilots too, even though they're aware of it. But we've had individual meetings with 20 of those flight schools, and we've identified about 36 flight schools in the area, both locally and regionally, that utilize Oxnard and Camarillo airports. So we've had individual meetings with 20 of those, but we've communicated flight friendly BC information with all of them. And we've had improved organization and content on bcairports.org. So we're trying to make it easier to navigate, make sure that information is up to date and clear for both pilots and the community to understand, kind of where we're headed. Adoption of Vector Noise and Operations Management System, or VNOMS, that was launched in November. Dedicated phone line for noise comments still exists, but we're also regularly tracking air traffic using VNOMS and doing comparisons. And we've added additional airfield signage. And then we've had acknowledgements from the community that improvements have been made. And we know, though, that there's still more work to do. So now I'll show you a comparison of images, like air traffic images from the most recent holiday week. I wanted to do an equal week. We've had a lot of rainy days, but this particular week had ideal weather conditions, and it was coming off of a holiday week. So I wanted to make sure there was equal comparison. So a lot of right turn traffic here. We do see traffic south of Bully that we would want to work on, but much better for the, as far as turns over residential areas in the Oxnard Shores area in particular. Next slide, please. This is an ideal day. We have very little traffic and turns over the coastal communities. A lot of really good balance, and we have a lot of turns before the canal, which is ideal. Next slide, please. Another good day overall, great balance, lighter traffic and some traffic south of Woolley, but a really good day overall. Next slide, please. This is a busier day. I had a lot of communication with the community on this day, as I do in other days similar to this. And so I'll talk a little bit more in a little bit about what our goal is to moving forward to address days like this. But still, we're seeing a good amount of right turn traffic. And I'll talk about why there are days with heavier left turn traffic and less of a balance in just a bit also. But yes, a very busy day there, and shows some of the work we need to do. And then a lighter traffic day, but the balance overall. Next slide, please. 17, solid balance, a lot of turns before the canal, so very positive overall. And then the 18th, this was a busier day, but we have a really good amount of balance here between right and left turn traffic. We'd like to see, better turns farther out past the shoreline, but overall, this was, as far as balance goes, with right and left turn traffic. It's a lot of improvement as far as that goes, and the traffic along Woolley is much improved in that one also. Next slide, please. So a recap of the week of February 12th, we had one bad day, rough day. We had 5 much better good days, and then one busy day, but it had good balance. But we do need to see better turns. And so on those days, that's what we focus on. Okay, what's missing in this component? So next slide, please. So some reasons we see left turn traffic. Generally, weather is a factor. Obviously, if there's a windy day, it'll shift traffic in the opposite direction. The tower can't utilize the right turn pattern if traffic coming from the north or from Camarillo is heavier. Tower staff will often shift traffic back to the left turn pattern if 3 or more planes are in the pattern. And this is to ensure safer operations, which I'll show you a visual of that in a minute. If traffic coming from the north and or Camarillo is much heavier. Runway closures at CMA is another reason. There was an incident, I believe, in January where there was a runway closure in Camarillo, and so air traffic was shifted in Oxnard that particular day. And then for safety reasons, the tower will also implement left turn traffic if Camarillo Airport is operating in the opposite landing direction. Next slide, please. So here's a visual of the same day, February 15th, that day that was really busy, got a lot of calls from the community, but this is an example. You can see, so I just want to clarify first, the image on the left is Oxnard Airport, all of the traffic at elevation 2,500 feet or lower. The image on the right is Camarillo traffic. So the reason the Oxnard area looks different on the right is because that's only showing air traffic in Oxnard that came from Camarillo. But the Oxnard image shows all air traffic from Oxnard that day. But you can see the reason I'm showing you this is because on that particular day, same period of time, same elevation, 2,500 feet below, you can see all that traffic from the north and from Camarillo, which would, for obvious reasons, make it very unsafe to have right turn traffic at that certain point of the day. So all of these images I should have indicated represent air traffic from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on that given day. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, David, we could stay there for a minute. I wanted to also indicate another reason we're, you'll see left turn traffic. Our goal has never been to eliminate left turn traffic. We want to see a better balance of traffic. We don't want to inundate any one community. We recognize, and it behooves us to be mindful of everybody involved in this and anybody who would be impacted. I received a call today from a gentleman who's asking about why there's more traffic over his community, and he lives in the northern side of Oxnard. So it's important to remember that there's a lot of people involved and impacted by this. That gentleman had some misinformation about what our goal is, and he was under the impression that we're trying to shift traffic only to the right. And he saw information on a community-driven website that does not have information or the same messaging that we have that's coming from the airports. So I let him know that bcairports.org is the only website that has county Department of Airports messaging. And I let him know that our goal is, again, not to shift traffic to the right only. We want to see a balance. We want to see, in the neighborhoods to the south, we want to see turns that are, out past the shoreline or before the canal. We want to see traffic north of Woolley. And we want to see to the north traffic that is over the residential areas that's on lower power settings. And so we're mindful of what the impact is on the community as a whole. And we want to address that and not, and again, not inundate one particular community. Next slide, please. So to shift over to Camarillo a little bit, some of the concerns and improvements that we're working on. The Camarillo residents note overall improvements to touch and go activity with smaller aircraft. But the primary concern is jet traffic and particularly arrivals. And so larger aircraft are much more complex when it comes to flight friendly DC. We're talking about jets that are on a fixed instrument approach when they're flying over Old Town in particular. And that fixed instrument approach keeps jets in line with the runway, and they're designed to minimize the margin of error. They're also following FAA regulations. And so, obviously jets have less maneuverability and flexibility than smaller planes. So that's a much more complex topic. And so participation in the Part 150 noise compatibility study public workshops is really critical to understand and evaluate those impacts, the impact of jet traffic on that community and address it that way. So we've had a lot of interest from Camarillo residents, and we just encourage anybody, Oxnard, Camarillo, anyone in the community and the county as a whole, who's interested to really dive in and be part of these community workshops. Next slide, please. So what now? What are we doing now? This is far, we have a lot of work to do. This is far from at a standstill. We have ongoing education and training that needs to happen. And that's gonna be for the foreseeable future. That's never gonna end. Continued engagement with flight schools in the tower, continued community engagement, Part 150 noise studies for both Camarillo and Oxnard. The spring and summer months, we're gonna have a heavier focus on communication with flight school managers and owners whose pilots have been identified as having difficulty following the flight-friendly patterns. And so basically days like the 15th, for example, we had a busier day earlier this week. We're gonna look at those days and focus on specific patterns and discuss those with the particular pilots and flight schools. And this is all about having a cohesive, all of us being involved to work toward progress. And so all of the flight schools that we've had communication with are on board. And, it's just about nurturing that relationship and having those open lines of communication. This is what's happening, this is what we're seeing this day. What can we do to make sure that, we're working more toward the patterns we'd like to see for flight friendly BC. And all of that communication is going to remain in place for the foreseeable future. Next slide, please. So from my viewpoint, over the last 6 months, what I have found is that this flight friendly BC and the success of it is as much a part about having open lines of communication and nurturing these relationships and establishing these relationships with the community, the pilots, the flight schools. It's as much about that as it is about the elements of the program itself, because we know that there's been trust that's been lost with the community. We know that there's existing resentments and animosity between the community, our office, flight schools and pilots. We know that that exists. And so we have to work to bridge the gap of communication and to make sure that we're listening to everybody involved, all stakeholders, and figuring out the best way to move forward so that everybody impacted is not only being heard, but that we're addressing where we can those concerns. We want to avoid misinformation. I had an example there that on January 2nd, I sent a communication out to community members, letting them know that there was left turn only traffic that day. And they were wondering what was going on. And there was a small plane on the north side of Oxnard Airport that did not have radio communication. And the tower was attempting to get communication with that, to secure communication with that aircraft. And it was there for about half an hour, 45 minutes, and it flew away. And it was a non-issue after that. But for safety reasons, the tower kept the traffic on the left turn pattern. And some of that turned into that plane that had no radio communication was doing touch and goes, which they weren't. They were just kind of hanging out in that area. So making sure that we are a trusted source of information, that people know they can come to us. I know that takes time, again, to reestablish that trust, but have folks know that they can come to us and get the information, the accurate information that they need. Another element to that is data accuracy. Recently, we became aware that VNOMS has a delay in some of their data, and it's not the data itself is not compromised. There's just a delay in it sometimes, and so we want to make sure that folks understand this is not a failure in the system. It's it's just a delay, and the data itself has not been compromised. And so VNOMS in particular was adopted to make a more efficient way for us to track noise comments and also look deeper into the flight activity all in one system. And so it's doing what we need it to do. But I understand that the community often wants answers in real time. What plane is up there right now? What can we see? And I totally get that. So in those cases, if when there is a delay with VNOMS, I would encourage the community, you can still use FlightAware, and there's other methods to track flight activity. But VNOMS for us so far is doing what we need it to do. And it may mean that some of my responses to the community are a little more delayed, just to make sure I have that accurate data, but the data is there. Blocks tail numbers. I appreciate Rita's comment because, you know, that's a legitimate question from the community. And a couple things I want to note about block tail numbers. Block tail numbers, if there is a blocked tail number on the public facing side of VNOMs or even FlightAware, it's not blocked on our end. We're able to identify and still see that flight traffic from that plane. But I also want to share that in some pilots that I've talked to who have their tail numbers blocked, it's for safety and security of that particular pilot. As ridiculous as it probably sounds to everybody in this room, some pilots in flight schools have had threats to their safety and their family safety, and so they've opted to block their tail numbers, and it's not a way for them to thumb their nose at the community. It's for their own safety and their family's safety. But again, we can still track that data and that flight activity. And so that's not an issue as far as the data that we are receiving and sending out to the community. I do want to share that when we've met with the flight schools and pilots, there's one common theme that they share with the messaging that we're getting from the community, and that's an interest in improved quality of life. So the folks that are in the air want to have solid quality of life when they're flying, just like the folks on the ground want to have, you know, solid quality of life. So we know that this is going to take work. It's going to take time. We need to keep that communication going. We need to keep get that trust back in place. But we're committed to that, and we know there's a lot of work to do. We know there's, you know, we're willing to pivot when needed. If something's not working, we're going to fix it, you know, and then also try to work to improve the things that are working. So overall, I want to reiterate that, and as the way I see this, it's just as much about nurturing and establishing these relationships as it is about the elements of the program, because they have to both be in place for it to work. Any questions?
Difference between the red and the green.
That's a great question. Everybody wonders what's the difference between the red and the green. So arrivals and departures.
I figured that.
Yeah.
Which one's arrivals?
Green. The green is arrivals, red is departures.
One term I'd like to see changed where you have as far as flight traffic, it's a good day or a bad day. I'd rather see acceptable or unacceptable or satisfactory or unsatisfactory, because for most of us in my age bracket, every day is a good day that you wake up.
All right.
Yeah.
That's good feedback. Thank you, Steve. I will make note of that for sure.
I would just offer to the chair, this is David. We do have two members of the public on Zoom who will be asking to make comments.
Okay.
Oh. Okay, why don't we engage one of them?
Very good. Okay, John, George, you're ready when we get your image up here and the timer ready.
Hello, committee. I'm John George. I'm an Oxnard pilot, and I'm also a resident under the Oxnard traffic pattern. I personally have noticed a large change in the number of left-hand traffic pattern operations for runway 25, with a noticeable reduction in aircraft overflying the harbor area where I live. I also carry around the Oxnard fly-friendly pattern diagram in my flight bag, so I can reference it whenever I'm in the pattern if I need to. And I speak to a lot of pilots at the airports, and they are all very interested. I've not spoken to one pilot in the area that is not interested in complying to the greatest extent possible with the Oxnard Fly Friendly program. Everyone is on board that I've spoken to. I would like to point out, we talked about misusing terms. I'd like to see the term violations taken out of a lot of people's conversations. I'd like to point out that there are no violations of the traffic pattern in something that's not a regulation. Fly Friendly is a voluntary program that many local pilots, including myself, try to comply with. I've spoken with many of them who are interested in complying with Fly Friendly, but there is one other overriding criteria that we fly with, and that is safety. Please remember that in the case of local pilots, we typically fly with ourselves or our families, so a safe flight is the most important part of any traffic pattern. And that's at any airport, not just Oxnard or Camarillo. In the case of Oxnard, if the right-hand pattern is full, or if there's a possible conflict from Camarillo, or one of any number of other possibilities, which Janet pointed out, that it might affect the safety of flight, then it's possible that a left-hand pattern would be used. And I would be the first one to use it if I think safety would be compromised in going to the right-hand pattern. Please, this is a voluntary noise abatement procedure that we try to comply with, but putting safety above all else is every pilot's and the community's main concern. It's surprising that the very people who talk about the safety of our airport would compromise that safety by blindly demanding a right-hand only pattern under all circumstances. In the case of student pilots, please understand that students are saturated in a very demanding environment, learning how to fly, learning pattern procedures, operating the aircraft safety, and mastering landings. To the extent that they can comply as much as possible is good. Sometimes they can't happen. That can't happen in every pattern flown. A few people have no right to demand noise abatement over the safe operation of our aircraft, both for the pilots and families who are flying our community. Fly Friendly is working well. It has pilot support. Let's let the program progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, Chair, the next person is calling by phone. And so I will let the system provide their voice. So caller, identify yourself and you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We do hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Joe Goslin and I live in the Oxnard Shores neighborhood. I'd like to comment on the Fly Friendly program. This program had some early success, but recently it has become clear that the program is not working as planned. There's been a noticeable increase in the number of flights directly over Oxnard Shores and surrounding communities. I believe there are 2 main reasons for this. One, the flight schools are not abiding by the recommended flight pattern and are showing no regard or respect for the residents of Oxnard Shores or the surrounding communities. We have been told that most, if not all, have been notified and spoken to about the program, yet we have many that simply ignore the friendly patterns. The biggest offenders are Channel Islands Aviation, Camarillo Flight Instruction, CAU, Big Ups Aviation, Proteus, 8 Ball Flying Club, and Aspen Helicopters with their planes. It's sad that these bad apples are ruining the quality of life for so many residents. Just this morning at 7:04 a.m., Aspen decided it would be fine to take off in their plane, cut the corner at 5th Street, and fly south right down the middle of Oxnard Shores on its departure. There was zero other traffic in the area, including no flights from Camarillo. We have a vast ocean to the west and miles of agriculture to the north, yet these pilots seem to think it's just fine to fly directly over the homes. All that we have been asking is either turn right, or if they're not experienced enough to do so, or if it's not safe, then proceed at least a half mile to a mile over the ocean before completing their loud and disruptive turns. Second reason, in my opinion, is the inability of the tower to help implement and instruct pilots on the flight-friendly pattern. Since they seem unwilling or incapable of helping, I suggest that the director get the FAA involved. As we're told, the FAA controls the airspace. The FAA might be able to get the tower on board with this program. Finally, I'd like to say that moving this meeting to the middle of the day and on the same day as the authority meeting is a big mistake and seems to be a way to keep the public from voicing their issues and concerns to the commission. I would hope that everyone notices that there's not that many people on this call, and previous calls in the evenings have been attended by far many more people. I'd also like the director to reinstate the public's ability to send in written comments to be read, as many people cannot attend a midday meeting, or some people may not be comfortable speaking in public. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Chair, no other members ask you to speak.
Oh, thank you. Okay,
We turn back to the commissioner.
yeah, no, E. We did that, okay.
Director's report.
Yeah.
Well, before we go on, I think some others have comments on this as well. I will make mine, but we wanted to break for the public. So I have a couple things to say. First of all, I want to mention, Jeanette, that point number 6 I thought was spot on. I think what I hear out there, what I think we feel is that pilots using the airports, those with hangars, those for whom that's their activity, that's their hobby, that's their passion. We want them to be able to enjoy that passion, that hobby, that activity. At the same time, these airports now are surrounded by lots of people. They work from home. Some of them are voice actors, some are musicians, some hold conference calls. Some have saved up their whole life to move out to the harbor. And we want them too to be able to enjoy their activities, their passions, their interests, and their economic well-being. And I think with what you've come up with, we can do that. And so I want to commend Director Freitas, Jeanette, and Dave in the back for all of their efforts to try to stitch together something we can all live together and be successful together. I'll mention Jeanette in particular has been a great communicator to the community. She gets tough calls and she takes them and she responds to them, and I admire that. And I want to give Assistant Director Nafee a shout out, because at one point he was Assistant Director, Acting Director, and Communications Director for our Department of Airports. So he had a tough time there, and but stayed with us. I agree with the progress that's been shown. I agree we have more to do. I will mention that it's when planes are climbing and powering up that is the problem. And anybody who wants to go out here and watch these planes land. At one point, we had a counter traffic where we had the Santa Ana, so the planes were going south of the airport and landing, taking off to the east. I had a plane 500 feet over my house, and it was whisper quiet. Why? Because it was landing. So what we really want to focus on is when the planes are coming up to speed, getting to altitude, initiating that turn, they're doing that over open fields, industrial areas, commercials, not people's homes. I think one of the things we're seeing is that noise is having an equal seat at the table, and that was something a lot of people asked for. Let's just all come together and not have it all be one side or the other side. And then finally, a comment was made, RE, the term violation, and I think that's an appropriate comment. I think those of us not in the pilot community did not understand that that term has emotional baggage with it. And correctly, we should not be using that term. So I think moving forward, and Jeanette's helped me with this, we're using a term accountability. And I encourage everybody, let's talk in terms of we're in an education phase. Eventually, we're going to get into an accountability phase. I'm curious about thoughts on the accountability phase, and I look forward to our continued progress.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew.
Madam Chair, this is Anna from staff. We do have another member of the public wishing to speak on Zoom. Would you like to hear that person now?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Rita Weingarten again. And I want to talk a little bit about the Fly Friendly program and some of the flaws that we have seen as a community. First of all, it is voluntary, and that seems to be one of the biggest problems. It simply is not working. We've had a lot of bad weather this winter, and so when we do have beautiful weather, we are getting inundated, as we will be this summer if things don't change. Some of our biggest offenders are people who have attended the Fly Friendly Forum and have received mailings and telephone calls from our airport staff outlining the Fly Friendly program. Yet they are still flying over our homes, and we are inundated. We are getting bombarded with noise. So one of the things that came up with me is I realized that I could still hear planes very loud and very clear. But when I would check out the flight aware site, I saw that the planes were actually turning at the canal. And I thought that was very odd. So I went onto my upper deck, and what I was seeing visually from that vantage point was the planes appeared to be flying over Little Harbor, where there's many condos and close to the homes in Oxnard Shores. So I decided to do a field trip. I went out to the Edison Canal with my camera and my telephone, and I compared what I was physically seeing and hearing to what I was seeing on the Flight Aware site. There's a huge discrepancy. What shows on Flight Aware to be turning either right or left at the canal, they're actually turning at Little Harbor. So I've taken some videos and some photos, and I sent that to both Jeanette and Keith, who were extremely responsive. And I do want to say thank you to Jeanette for digging a little deeper, which helped me to understand exactly what they needed. So I do have all this information available with dates and tail numbers when they are not hiding them. So I'm kind of just, going through this. I also received some phone calls today from other neighborhoods. One gentleman from Cabrillo, Wilson, and Seaview Estates have all been experiencing what many of us in the Shores have been experiencing for a long time. A question that came up is, why aren't we not charging landing fees? We have way too many schools, way too many planes, way too many overflights over our homes. These small planes, we had a 1948 plane flying over a house a couple of days ago. They don't have the best safety record. I read an article about a year ago, 46,000 small planes have crashed. So I do truly appreciate the efforts, but it's not working. And that's simply what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any more comments?
Chair, we do not have any more comments.
Okay, great. So do we want to receive and file? With excellent report, by the way, so full of information. Thank you.
Receive and
Mr.
file.
File. Okay, thank you. Okay, director's report.
All right, go through, excuse me, a few items we have. I did want to point out that our newly elected supervisor, District 2, Gorell, has appointed a couple new members, Shane Warburton, and also Buzz Patterson, who we just found out yesterday. He'll be joining us, I'm expecting, for the next meeting. With that comes specifically, that means that the vice chair that you all have elected at the last meeting, Bob Pimborn, is no longer on the commission. So you will have to, at some point, probably the next meeting, think about and re-elect a vice chair. So just want to point that out. You have heard me talk second deputy director to Mayor Dave Nathie. Dave Nathie currently for us is working on overseeing the business side of the airport operation, looking for a second deputy to oversee the operations maintenance side. So we have going through the process. We're expecting to hold our first round of interviews in mid-April. I do want to talk just a bit, and we do have, I think, at least one photo. Jeanette did a fabulous job of updating on the noise maintenance program and all the things we're doing with Fly Friendly DC. Dave, I don't know if you have that. Oh, there it is in the center. That's just one of the flight schools that has all of the material that we've developed for the flight schools and the pilots, pilot guide, area guides, so that they help the pilots understand what we're looking for to help them be the best neighbor that we can be, both at Oxnard and Camarillo. Again, I want to say, you've heard me and Jeanette over the last at least 6 months say, This is a large project. This is, the community members, and I appreciate, they want change immediately. The perspective is that we've got 2 airports that have been in this community, each of them for about 80+ years. And the patterns that are in place are what they've been doing for decades. So we're asking for a modification. And the perspective I'll give you is, do you remember the first day you learned to drive? All the complexities and then the fear and nervousness and all those things. Well, learning to fly about 10 times is more complicated as that. And now we're asking to change, where they fly, how, along with all the other things that go in with that. So we've identified, as you've heard, some 36 flight schools in the LA region that use R2 airports from time to time. Those equate to about 4,000 to 5,000 pilots, and there's new pilots learning to fly, learning to fly, all those things that change about every 6 months. So there's a lot of people. That doesn't include all the based pilots that we have at the 2 airports. So it is a process that will take many months, and as Jeanette pointed out, we will have ongoing forever education process. So bear with us, it will take some time. I can appreciate our neighbors that want it immediately, but it will take time. And we've seen improvements. Again, acknowledged by many of the community members. We have a bad day. I wouldn't say that that's a failure of the program. It just shows the complexity and the magnitude of what we've got to go through and how long we've got to do this. So that's one point.
Thank you. Very well said.
All right, I'm going to go through our famous private hangar leases. As you know, last year the board approved those. We're about halfway through the hangar inspection. So not only moving from a month-to-month agreement to a 20-year lease, we instituted that you need to have a hangar inspection, make sure you have an airplane and meet all the FAA requirements, and then go through all the paperwork. And so we're about halfway through those hangar inspections, and we're shooting to wrap those up by the end of June. And for those private hangar owners, the incentive is, again, we waive the 2%. If you're selling your hangar, you won't pay that if you get it done before the end of June timeframe. So that's the incentive to go through, sign up with us, get your hangar inspection. If you're looking to maybe sell that, would waive that 2% fee that would normally come, will happen after starting July 1st of 23. We got here, I do want to point out, as we touched a little bit, but a little more detail, the PAC meeting and public meetings for the Part 150 noise studies. Our first public meeting will be Monday, March 20th, and then the following day is the Oxnard public meeting, Part 150, and that is on March 21st. I think we have a little bit of flyer. Jeanette has done a fabulous job working to get the flyers out to community members. It's on our web page as well. Anybody that's interested. We've rented a hotel in Oxnard to host these for us. And then airport layout plan. This is the change. We originally, last couple of years, we're talking about airport master plan for Camarillo. As we talked about at length, we have downgraded that, I'll call it, to an airport layout plan narrative update. And that public meeting, first public meeting in that process is scheduled for April 18th. More information on location and other things is forthcoming. I do have a photo to share. We've implemented some improvements. Thank you, Byron, who heads our maintenance section. Started with upgraded lighting for the fuel farm here at Camarillo. He's looking to, in the process of doing some upgrades to the fencing and then adding K-rail around the facility as well to add some security and protection to the facility. So lighting is done and the others are coming very soon. And the last item is the taxiway connector project. Aaron touched a bit on the contract side of that. We are, I take that back. She was talking about Foxtrot. This is the connector at Oxnard. The connector is Alpha through Echo. We were originally going to start earlier this year, but because of the weather, as noted, and it sounds like it's coming again this weekend, they pushed the start of that project to April 3rd. That's all I have of the director's report, unless there's any other questions.
Any questions or comments? Steve? No.
Is Steve end of the table?
Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, reports. Any comments on any of those?
Receive and file.
Thank you. And correspondence. Any questions, any comments?
Receive and file.
Uh,
One question of Director Freitas. It was somewhere in one of these correspondence, the runway at Camarillo, the FAA required a crown, and you did not want to do a crown, you wanted to stay with a transverse.
Yeah,
But
so
there was some reference to the runway being narrow.
it's actually in Camarillo. It is a future Camarillo project.
Right.
So it's our existing runway.
Right.
In our most recent discussions with FAA for future grant funding and projects, is to redo, as we are about to wrap up for Oxnard, is redoing basically the runways, the connectors, and the parallel taxiways here at Camarillo. That is in scope, in neighborhood of $70 million project to do all of that paper. Because it's an old military design, most runways standard these days are crowned in the middle for rain and
Slough the water on.
all those other things. That is designed at a tilt from one side to the other, and a slant. So to meet new standards, you would need to now crown the whole runway, and complexities and more cost. So we are asking the FAA, that's a request that we just made, was to leave it as is, save some money, it makes the project happen faster. And so that's what the module standard is. You talk about narrowing the runway too, the new standards, because of the size, the smaller size of aircraft that we have at this airport than what it was designed for in the military days, would also shrink the runway with a bit.
But you're not planning to shrink the runway, right?
We may have to do that. We're making arguments of why you leave it and just do it as is and not shrink it and not crown it, all those other things. So if we were to meet today's design, and because of the magnitude of what we're doing to it, they would typically require us to shrink it and crown it. But we're asking for a modification, module standards, to allow us to not do that, save money, save time.
Right. Can I ask one question? Why would they want you to shrink it? I could see if you were building it de novo, only build to 100, but if it's 150 now, why shrink it? What's the advantage of
Their
that?
thought process is cost. That, not only would it cost right now to make the change, but in the future.
I see.
It's more pavement. it's
More pavement,
Right.
better to have a narrower runway for down the road.
Yeah, I mean, you would argue from a safety standpoint, the wider the better, yes, but they're looking from an efficiency standpoint. You don't need for the size of airplanes that we have, 100 feet is wide enough, you don't need. That's their argument.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Okay, do we have any other commission comments?
Yeah, I have a few comments.
Okay,
And I probably was a little negative on this whole public information campaign when we started, but I just got to commend Jeanette on what a yeoman's job she's doing. And I think in light of some of the public comments we had and so forth, when that information is put out, and we are, as it would seem, that we're getting more compliance, but also there's a few folks on the other side that are totally negative, that this isn't working and this is horrible, etc. That's not right either. We've lived in the area, starting part-time back in '78 and moved up to the beach. Originally lived in Oxnard Shores, now we live in Hollywood Beach. Since '81. And you guys have heard all my comments about when we had commuter service out of Oxnard Airport, and you could hear them warming up those diagonals in the morning. Didn't need an alarm clock. But we have other noise issues, and actually I was, Director Freitas and I were talking about it, like, we have Ventura County Railway. For those of you that aren't acquainted, that brings vehicles through the base and crosses Victoria, Channel Islands, not Victoria, Channel Islands, and then sort of goes along Woolly. Not just does that make a lot of noise, but for those unfortunate enough to live nearby, it shakes their whole house. So, then the community involvement in these neighborhood councils, I haven't heard anything about that. It's like the picking on the airports seem to be fair game, no matter where you are. And the only time you don't hear people picking on the airport is when they want to get a flight out of somewhere to go somewhere else. So we need to work on that balance, and I think we're doing a good job, and I'd like to see some of those naysayers come along and say, thank you guys for like all the attention you're giving this matter. I mean, take this meeting today. I think we spent 3/4 of the time on noise issues here, which is, there's a lot of other important business that we're involved in with the airport. So we're making progress. I applaud Steve for his pushing the neighborhood council and stuff, but let's be fair and let's work to our common goals. And we're never going to eradicate the noise issue. I mean, it's there. And those of us who live at the beach, talk about something noisy. When the Coast Guard's flying those dolphins along right over the houses, boy, you know, those shake you up. And then the county sheriff helicopter, noisy, very noisy. So never heard complaints about that. So, I mean, they're necessary. There shouldn't be complaints, but we need to sort of we're working on mitigating these problems, but we got to try to like reduce the complaining part of that component. Those are my 2 cents worth.
Thank you very much. Do we have any comments from our newest member? Questions, comments, anything?
Well, hi, everybody. Shane Warburton, one of the newest members here. This has been very educational for me coming in here and meeting fellow commissioners and hearing the issues that the public has regarding the airport noise and just delving into the other items that are that the airport is dealing with and that require our input. I am a pilot. As of yesterday, I'm a commercially rated pilot, and I've been flying out of Camarillo since about 2015 now. So I'm kind of coming onto this commission with the pilot perspective. And so I've flown plenty of times out of Camarillo and out of Oxnard as well. It's interesting delving into these issues and seeing where people in the community stand in the airport environment. I will say that this flight-friendly program is flying through a flight school, Channel Islands Aviation. They do have this information published. It is right there on the front desk. The flight instructors tell you about it. Everybody is notified about it, but that also does bring up a point that was mentioned earlier, that a lot of these pilots are still just learning how to fly, and in the traffic pattern environment, all those 90-degree turns that you're making in very close succession, you're at pretty low airspeeds and you don't want to risk stalling. And if a pilot needs to extend a little bit more, if they need to take a little bit of a wider turn because they're not paying as much attention to airspeed and are at risk of a stall, then it might put them over somebody's house. And we just live in an interesting area where we have 3 Delta airspaces that are connected to each other with the Camarillo Airport, the Oxnard Airport, and Point Mugu. And I can tell you from the pilot perspective, flying rented aircraft out of a flight school, we're very aware of the neighborhoods that are concerned with the noises. And I can tell you that it is a consideration of pilots to pay attention to that. So that is my jumble of thoughts there.
Very nice and welcome. Thank you for your input. Okay, any other commission comments?
Just a quick comment. I want to welcome Shane and suggest, since we are getting new members, I would like to ask that we have a session where we sit down and have a working session and look at our bylaws, make sure everybody's, have a chance to discuss them, what they mean, what the implication is. And maybe even a discussion of the Brown Act at that point, like a training session for the board with a new board member or commissioners, I think would be a good thing. And I'd like to put in a ask for that.
Thank you. Okay, anything else? In that case, any motion to adjourn? Steve?
Yeah, I'll make it.
Okay. Steve usually do it.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.